Well, we have officially left the model era, and are now in the CGI series. Starting off with the most infamous era of the show, the Miller era, or at least that's what I call it. I have met a lot of fans for the weirdest of Thomas content, but I have never met a fan of the Miller era, and for understandable reasons. For the next 4 months, I will be taking a look at each season of this era and see if this era really is as bad as people say it is. Now, this is going to be different from my hate era ranking videos, because with that era, I didn't need to rewatch that era. I just remember the episodes by heart. But with this era, I forget most of these episodes exist sometimes, so I'm going to be rewatching the entire era and writing down my opinions while doing so. Please give me some support during these reviews. I'm gonna need it. Anyways, what better place to start than Season 13, the one that started it all? For most people, Season 13 is the most tolerable of the Miller seasons, and while I agree it's not bad, it isn't actually my favorite. You'll see what season that takes its crown later on down the line. Anyways, let's just get this over with. Before we start the ranking, I just want to point out that I will be changing the layout of the tier list for this ranking as well as seasons 14 and 15. The reason why is because while there are good episodes in these seasons, they don't really deserve more than an 8 out of 10 bar for me. For a start to the CGI series, Creaky Cranky is pretty weak. It is nice that they gave Cranky a supporting role, but the story is quite dumb, and of course, there's the idiot himself, Thomas. I place this episode in the poor tier. The Lion of Sodor is one of the many dumb Thomas episodes in this era. Makes me wonder why Thomas is still on Sodor at this point, although I do like the small bit of lore the Fat Controller presents. But that doesn't save me from placing this episode in the bad tier. Out of all the episodes this season, Tickle Pink is the one I hate the least, for reasons that many others have pointed out. The fact that they even bothered to mention an undercoat in the show is pretty impressive, and James is perfectly in character. In fact, scratch that, everyone is in character. Although this episode does still suffer from some Miller problems, such as how did Diesel not notice James hiding until he shunted the last 2 trucks, and why were James and Gordon on the same track? The latter I didn't even notice until my latest rewatch. Hence why I don't think this is worth a rating higher than an 8. Otherwise, this episode goes in the good tier. Double Trouble not only steals the US title from a Season 2 episode, though that episode doesn't make much sense with that title, but it's also kinda dumb. Sir Loam Hat is so childish, it makes me wonder how he's even a sir. Just for that, I place this episode in the poor tier. Slippy Soda is another dumb Thomas episode. I guess the scenes with Sir Topham Hatt and Mr. Bubbles are kinda funny, but yeah, bad tier. The Early Bird had a good concept, but was badly executed. The fact that the episode flat out says that Thomas never pulled the mail before is one of the main reasons why I consider the CGI series to be a separate canon from the model series. I feel this episode could have worked if a different character had Thomas's role. You know, one that actually hasn't pulled the mail before. Either way, this episode goes in the bad tier. Playtime is an okay episode. Charlie is okay in my books. I do understand the hate towards him, but I don't mind his jokes, to be honest. Honestly, I'd rather listen to them than Billy's.
Stop telling me what to do. You are a very bossy engine.
Any day. The story itself is okay. Thomas and Charlie's races are at least fun to watch. I put this episode in the okay tier. Thomas and the Pigs is another dumb Thomas episode, though I do like the way the piglets were animated at the end, so I place this in the average tier. Time for a Story is another dumb Thomas episode that is poor, but would have been decent with another character. Poor tier. Percy's Parcel is alright. I do like how they change up the formula slightly. Instead of Percy making 3 mistakes as usual, he makes 1 mistake and tries to fix it, only making it worse. I like that. It's still 3 strikes though, and there is that plot hole at the beginning, so I place it in the okay tier. Toby's New Whistle is another wimpy Toby episode. It's not as bad as the likes of Toby Feels Left Out and Toby's Triumph, but it still sucks due to how butcher Toby's character is. Toby is my favorite character in the franchise, and to see him get regressed to this just hurts my soul. This one goes in the bad tier, but at the top of it. A Blooming Mess is a decent episode. I do like how Emily was trying to help Mavis by making her feel better, though the episode has a lot of problems, so I place this in a decent tier. Thomas and the Runaway Kite is another Dumb Thomas episode. Poor tier. Steamy Sodor is another Dumb Thomas episode. When you send Thomas to work at the Steamworks, you're just asking for trouble. Though I do like Kevin's role in this episode, so I place this in the average tier. Splish Splash Splosh is another Dumb Thomas episode where he acts like an idiot. I also dislike the way the puddles look in this episode, but that's just my opinion. This episode goes in the bad tier. The Biggest Present of All is decent. I personally don't mind the fact that Hiro came back to Sodor. I just wish they gave it a season or two before he returned. I do think Thomas is kind of an idiot, but he was trying to find a present for Hiro, so he isn't entirely thinking about himself, which is good, and the ending was pretty heartwarming. I place this episode in the okay tier. Snow Tracks is another one of the better episodes this season. Gordon feels pretty much in character, and I love the continuity with Thomas and Gordon's alliance here, something that was completely forgotten about during the Brenner era. Seriously, why do people love that special so much? I place this in the good tier. Henry's Good Deeds is alright. It's kinda boring, but I've seen worse. At least Henry isn't an utter wimp like he is later on in the era. I place this in the top of the average tier. Buzzy Bees is another Dumb Thomas episode. It's literally James Goes Buzz Buzz done wrong. I ironically enjoyed this one, but I still say this is the worst of the season. I'm sorry if my reviews on Thomas's episodes are so short, I just can't talk about Thomas's episodes without repeating myself. Once again, we end the season off on a good note. Hiro Helps Out is possibly the most nostalgic episode of the entire season. I have seen this episode so many times, I can literally quote every single dialogue from this episode. You guys think I'm joking?
Sir, good morning, sir. I hope the day finds you well, sir.
The day finds me with much too much to do, Hiro. That's how the day finds me.
I can't see, sir.
What are you staring at, Hiro?
Nothing, sir. Just your heart, sir.
Excuse me.
But even with nostalgia aside, I still really like this episode. I like how it adds some depth to Hiro's character, and I can understand his motivation in this episode. If I heard that Sir Topham Hatt was very busy, I wouldn't want to bother him either. This might be my second favorite episode of this season. Overall, Season 13 is not a good start to the CGI series. There aren't that many good episodes in this season, and the ones that are don't really break the 8 out of 10 bar. Though we do have quite a lot to talk about this season. First of all, the animation is really good. The engines all feel like they have some weight to them, and I love the extra details such as Thomas's working pistons under his undercarriage. Greg Tiernan did a great job replicating the models. Secondly, the music slaps. I find some of the themes in this season to be absolute bops, and I'm actually surprised with the amount of times where Robert Hartshorn took one of his themes from the hit era and recomposed it into the style of the CGI series. Thirdly, the voice acting. I'm of course referring to the US dub since that's the dub I grew up with. While rewatching these episodes, I realized the voice actors didn't put that much energy while reading the scripts. They didn't really sound like the characters themselves. I'm especially not a fan of Henry or Toby's voices.
Bust my buffers. My idea wasn't a good deed at all.
I wish I had my old bell back. I don't know how to use this new loud and booming 3-chime steam whistle.
Now, this isn't entirely the voice actor's fault, it's the voice director's that's entirely to blame. And this is the first CGI production, and the voice acting does slightly improve over time, until season 21 that is. As for the characters, I don't really have much to say about them. A lot of Thomas's episodes are just plain forgettable and samey. Edward didn't get any episodes, which is good. Henry is hit or miss. Gordon, James, and Percy are pretty much in character. Toby is an utter wimp, and Emily is pretty stupid. Mavis and Cranky did get some time in the spotlight in some episodes, but it's the new characters I really want to talk about. I really like Hero and Victor, even though the latter just exists in this season for me. I'm not the biggest fan of Kevin, and Charlie is just okay. But overall, it's fine. I placed this between seasons 11 and 12. And that's the end of the video. The season 14 ranking will come out next month. Thanks for watching and goodbye.